we get to reconstruct our identity. There's no one way we have to be. And when you reconstruct it, you don't ever have to be that way for any period of time. You can constantly move and grow and change and be and develop and redevelop and say, hey, I actually just don't love this anymore. I'm going to move and be that. And I'm going to do that now. And this makes sense.
Welcome to the Allow Yourself podcast. And remember, this is a space to breathe, to listen, to grow, and to go beyond differences. Beyond sex, religion, or politics, this is a conversation where you can participate and find yourself in what unites us, in what really we share is humanity. So today we have an amazing guest, and she is in Canada, in Quebec, and I'm in Costa Rica. So, first of all, thank you, universe, to allow ourselves with the technology to communicate wherever we are in the world, we still can communicate. And Sarah Quinn is a frequency transformation expert, helping women stop grinding for success and start attracting it. Women entrepreneurs. As the creator of the Alpha Legacy Method, she guides leaders from desperate to magnetic, where premium clients say yes with ease, and wealth comes an embodied state, not as a chase. So, welcome, Sarah. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here.
Um, we always we try to start our conversation with the question that when you hear allow yourself, what comes to mind?
Now, I love this question. And I think that if we ask ourselves questions like this more often, we step into complete transformation. But the thing that comes to mind for me is I just think we need to allow ourselves to reconstruct our identity and not feel that any one identity has to be true for us, that we can create a new identity based on who we want to be, not based on what we've lived or what we think people want us to be. And so this reconstruction of identity, I love the permission to do that. I think allowing that is so important.
So, when did you allow yourself to reconstruct yourself?
It's such a great question. I think I've been doing that a lot in life. And I think that over the years, I think that we often do it and we don't realize we're doing it. And so we tend to do it with less intentionality. We shift and we mold and we change based on what we hear, what we see, what media and social media and other people tell us we should be. I remember when I first became a mom, you should do this, you should do that. And I was constantly reconstructing. But I think in the last 3 years of my life, I've really done an intentional reconstruction of my identity, of how I want to show up in this world, of how I want to just like play with my life instead of being so rigid about having to be a certain way. Yeah.
Ah, that's really interesting because what is telling you that you have to be in a certain way is usually the things outside, right? That we tend to look for our answers outside, but it's when we really realize that we have to connect to ourselves in order to know what we want. So, what is to be what others want or what I'm supposed to be? Now, I interpreted that already. You said what I'm supposed to be, but what did you mean by that?
I think that there is such a dynamic in today's world of telling people who they should be, how we should think, how we should act, how we should behave. And, there's so much controversy around that is, some people are very, you should be this way, and some people are very, you should be this way. And I think that the detachment of that and simply going inward, like you said, but who do I want to be and what matters to me and what in my life has constructed me to show up the way that I'm showing up. And do I want to hold that? Do I want that to be the truth about who I create myself to be in this world, or do I want it to be something different? We don't have to hold on to any of that.
Oh, yes, it means that what I'm hearing is that you're saying that then we try to fit in, then we try to, people tell us do this, and we try to fit into this group, but in order to fit into the other group, we have to be something else. So we need to play with those roles that they are not really ours, it's not really me. I'm just taking the norms of each group in order to fit in. Is that correct, what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I see this so much in entrepreneurship. I've been a coach for 21 years, and a lot of times women will come to me and say, I saw this person doing this online. I need to do it. And I say, let's dissect for a second. Do you have the same audience as them? Do you have the same offer as them? Do you have the same skills as them? Do you want to put the same amount of time that they put into it? Do you want to, be that present online? Last week you said, I don't really want to have to work this many hours. And so I think that we're almost conditioned to feel like we always have to be more, more of this and more of that and do it this way and do it that way. And, it becomes exhausting to try to be all the things that we think or that we're told that we could be better if, you could be better if you just implemented this. Or, you'd be happier if you got up at 5 a.m. every day. Or not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But there is so much of the telling of who and how we should be as humans that I think we just get lost in what do I actually want? What actually matters to me? Who do I
Eh,
want
eh,
to be?
Exactly. I was having that conversation with some other colleagues that today the marketing goes in that direction. It's like if you don't do this, you're not good enough. If you don't do this, you're not good enough. If you don't do this, you won't be succeed. You won't succeed. So it's like we are all the time not enough. We are never complete. We have to chase the rabbit all the time, right?
Yeah,
This is we ha- so when enough is enough, it's another question that it's not in terms of money, because that usually is related to when enough is enough with amount of wealth, but in money specifically, but when enough is enough for I'm enough as I am right now. How do
yeah,
you know
yeah.
that? So
Oh,
how do you
that's,
know that?
you know, I think this really comes to, I actually was just doing this with a client this morning, and I do something called the 360-degree self-concept map. And it's basically an assessment where we take different areas of the life or of our life and we write down like my physical self. What do I actually believe about my physical self? Like, what do I believe about my legs and my butt and my boobs and my arms and my head, my hair? Like, what do I believe to be true? And I think when we answer the question of what is enough, it's when I actually stop and take a look at how I see myself as a human. Am I happy with that? Not just am I happy with that, am I happy with that based on what I want for me or based on what someone else said? So the second part to the activity is like, why do I think this? Is it because someone said, I was sharing, prior to starting that I left a very abusive marriage. I weigh about 118 pounds. So this gets people really confused or riled up when I say this. But my husband always told me, you're so fat. You have such flabby legs and a flabby butt. And, if you would just go to the gym more, if you would just work out more, then I would like you. And it got to this point where I began to believe this. And so I started taking all the mirrors down in the house, and I wouldn't, look in a mirror, and I would get out of the shower and I'd wrap myself in a towel and I wouldn't look at my own body. And, you know, I was believing that I wasn't enough physically, but was it because I actually didn't like the way I was? Or was it because I was conditioned or taught that there was something. And so I think that when we look at this question of how do I know what's enough, we really have to get, again, present, go inward and ask, where do the beliefs come from? And are they beliefs I want to hold? Because I could look at that and go, that's not really a belief that I want to hold anymore. So I have to choose to let go of it. And it's not that simple, right? It's not as simple as just, oh, I don't believe this anymore. But the beginning process of letting go of things to actually discover who am I and am I enough comes from really asking the questions and dissecting the self to a degree that I think we're so busy and we have so much information coming at us that we rarely do. It's always just the chase for more, or like you said, the need to be what someone says in order to be good enough or smart enough or doing the right things. And it does come up in business, but it also comes up in all aspects of our life, I think.
Oh, especially as you said in an abusive marriage that I come also
Hmm.
from that you can be the best entrepreneur outside and you can be in control and power and be amazingly successful. And just because of that, when you get home, it's like with the frog syndrome slowly. No, if you would be this, I would love you. If you would be that, you will love you. It's like you have to meet their expectations just in order to love, because in really and truly that we were looking for love, acceptance, and validation to
Yes.
be to in order to be with a narcissist person that at the beginning is they know how to talk and they're so charming and they and look what you're going to be with me and the great person you will be being next to me and everything me, yeah.
Yeah.
um
It's all
you're
coming back.
see, there is yo in Spanish, right? Like a yo-yo, really. But
Yeah.
but really is that they. It's not what I wanted to say is that it's not that easy as you say just to. Oh, I will like myself, and that's it. Those are the situations really when we need help from outside because we cannot. We don't even know and we don't know. It's like we are just like mat, you say, like
Hmm.
at the entrance of the house that you
Yeah.
enter the house and everybody just step on you, because you don't know to be different. You need somebody else to point, no, that's not true, no, that's not true, because your
Yes.
inner voice comes to that, right?
Yeah.
Also, so what inspired you to help other women?
Yeah, so I just think that going through life, I was a very young single mom. I got pregnant at 18. I had my son at 19. He's 20, just going into his 21st year of living life and getting ready to buy his first home. And I have an 18-year-old daughter. And I remember how difficult life felt and not knowing, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know in the earlier stages of life to ask the question, is this who I want to be? You know? And I really started looking at the journey that I went through with all of the different stages of life and all of this sort of unfolding and the unpacking, and then thinking like I was such a successful entrepreneur and I've been doing it for 21 years and I've built this huge massive business and community, and then you kind of like pull back the curtain and go, there's a lot of chaos back here. Like how do these two worlds coexist? And I thought, when other people are in this situation of just life happening, where do they go? What do they do? And so I ended up developing tools for women in underdeveloped countries to help them get access to free education and help them get jobs or start businesses. And so I just think that this process of living such a difficult journey and also living such a beautiful journey simultaneously or even parallel at the same time, you kind of realize, two things can be true. I can be in a really hard spot and also have really good things happen to me. But for a lot of women, they're in a hard spot and they don't know what they don't know, so they don't know how to get help, and they don't know where to start, and they kind of don't know what to do. And I realized that not everyone has that privilege. And so I really went on this journey to just sort of reshape this and help women understand, both professionally, entrepreneurs, but also from a nonprofit aspect, how do we move from one situation to another in life? And so it's just been such an interesting journey. Oh.
And what about, what would you say to your 18 years old self that you
Oh,
know now that you didn't know back then?
I'd say, what the heck are you thinking? This is all so wrong. And that's definitely what I'd say. You know, Intuition is such an interesting thing. And, you know, I think inherently, to a degree, we recognize that something might not be right, or it might not feel right, or we might really not want things to be the way that they are. And for whatever reason, and I'm sure everyone's is quite different, but we don't have the tools necessarily to know how to leave, how to speak up, where to go, how to get help. Just the other day, I was just having such a hard time with going through this divorce process. And, as you go through these things with a narcissistic person, things always escalate before, they sort of hopefully calm down. And I just remember thinking, who do I talk to? I'm a successful business person. Who do you call?
Mhm.
Who's gonna want to hear my imperfect side of my life? And I do have people in my corner, but you kind of just go, it's so hard, and it shouldn't be that hard. I just think that life shouldn't be that hard. And honestly, I don't even remember your question, but for some reason we landed here. It was meant to come out. But I just think that, yeah, the 18-year-old version of myself, I just think that if I could go back and say to her, it would be just like, listen to yourself, like listen to that little voice. It is really trying to tell you something, and you really need to develop that self-trust. I'm not sure I've had much of it over the years. Definitely developed a lot of it now.
Oh, exactly. So that's when we betray ourselves. I call
Yes.
it, I call it when you start, but that's a narcissist work. Okay?
Yes.
The narcissist work in destroying the trust you have to yourself.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like, oh no, that's not what you're listening. Oh, are you crazy? Do you really think that? How can it be? Oh, you're so stupid thinking those things. No, those are the lines that boom, 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 boom. So we start, it creates the doubt in yourself. I think,
Yes.
at least it happened to me.
Yes.
So it's like coming back to the 18 years old. I was that at that time when I started dating also a narcissist. And he said, just believe in yourself, listen to your voice,
Yeah.
see your red flags, see your yellow flags, see them, trust yourself. Even if they think you are stupid and they're so much intelligent, okay, just stay in your stupidity. Don't change that. It's fine. No, it's like listen to yourself, trust yourself. Yes, is and it's so hard to, how you call it, reconstruct,
Hmm.
rebuild, reconstruct that. But that's the main thing, that if we listen to most of the coaches out there and the people that are like Louise Hay and others, they all start with love yourself, trust yourself. No,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And
so
it's,
everything starts from, that's your soul talking. Don't let your mind talk and your logic.
yeah.
Allow your soul talking to you, right?
Yeah, I now live from a different sort of perspective of things. When I interact with people, I go after, I always, after every call, every interaction, every new person, I go, how did they feel? Not what did they say, not, you know, that they're really great and interesting, I'm sure, but how do I feel right now? And I kind of catalog that as, is this a thing that happens every time I'm around this person. You're not going to have perfect moments with people all the time. You're not going to feel good around everyone all the time. Sometimes it's a you thing, sometimes it's in an interaction thing, sometimes it's that them thing. But I've started to pay attention to not what do I think, right? Not that I don't want to trust what I think, but I think that the developing of trust can't always be left up to the mind because our mind is taught to keep us safe. And so sometimes it does that in the worst way possible. But how do we feel is such a good trigger to what's happening in my body right now, what's happening to the actual state that I'm in. And I think if it happens enough times that you have really good feelings around a person, it's okay. And it feels easier to open up and trust that because you have an awareness to it. But if it happens on the opposite spectrum enough times, it's kind of a hey, there's something to pay attention to here. You know, something's obviously not right. I don't feel good around this person. So I definitely live from that spectrum now, and it's so much better. And it's helped me immensely develop a whole different level of trusting myself of, hey, the body keeps the score, right? Pay attention. It's triggering something good or, I don't like to say good or bad, but something positive or something negative, and it's important to pay attention to that. It helps us establish a baseline with people, I think.
And now that you have a 18-year-old daughter, and we usually live back through their eyes, no? What would you tell her? Would you tell her the
Uh,
same thing?
I actually just had a conversation with her this morning. She has a boyfriend now. Oh my gosh, those teenage years. She has a boyfriend and she's so nervous. She is definitely the polar opposite of me, and I feel so excited about that. She she lived a different upbringing than I did for sure. We
Mhm.
either become what we know or we sort of become the opposite. We sort of tend to fall
Mhm.
in one of those spectrums. But I said to her this morning, you know, life is about a culmination of moments. And, she's in her last year of high school. I said, you gotta just worry less about the whole big picture right now and just pay attention to the moment. What are you learning in this moment? What are you feeling in this moment? What are you noticing in this moment? What experience are you actually having right now? She got accepted to paint a mural in the
Mm.
school. She was the only student out of the whole school that got this opportunity. And she says, Mom, I'm terrified to do this. And I said, okay, well, let's go inward. Like, what's happening? Why? And so I just think that all those lessons teach you as a parent to come at it from, you don't necessarily want them to live the same life you did, depending on who you are, I'm
Mhm.
sure. But yeah, I always try to teach her that just living in the moment and not worrying so much about how it's all going to work, like that detachment piece, manifestation, like detach from the outcome, just what is it that you really desire, and like let's show up for that and play in that and have fun in that and live in that and not be so serious about all of life.
Wow. Beautiful. Really
Yeah.
beautiful. And you have such a um um powerful body of work. So um
Thanks.
can you tell us a little bit about your courses, your messages, your work, what you're doing um in the other world, in
In
other worlds?
in different countries that I
Yeah.
do. Yeah. So it's called She Thrives, and it officially started 4 years ago as a business, and it was a business for helping students in different countries become virtual assistants. And it became, something I never imagined. It was completely accidental, if I'm being honest with you, but the universe gives you what you need when you are ready to receive it. And so I kind of thought, well, we'll hire people that we need for the company and give them some education so that they're really good at supporting me. And then it was, someone said, oh, my friend is doing this work for someone else. Can they take the classes you made? Oh, sure, why not? My friend is, and then all of a sudden, 2 years into this, we had about 6,000 students. that had gotten access to this education. And lots of things.
In what countries are you working?
So there's 35 different countries right now, and so a lot of them are underdeveloped countries. So we have, a lot of Philippines and lots of different places in Africa, just a lot of, places that are really coming into more of what we hope will be further development. But a lot sort of happened in the world over the last few years, as we all know. And so I really started seeing a dynamic happen in the community where a lot of the men from, certain countries, and I won't name them because that just doesn't feel aligned with me, but a lot of men from certain countries were really starting to make it vocal that they didn't want the women having all this access to education and earning money. And it was just becoming a whole different dynamic in this online community. And so I ended up gradually moving the men out, and we're building a new program for them because it's such an interesting lesson to see how that actually unfolds. But now we have just over 10,000 women who have gotten access to education. And so when they come into the program, they have three sort of opportunities. And opportunity one is get access to education and we will help you get a job. And so they sort of are that virtual assistant where they help with, editing content, podcast, whatever it might be, right? Things like that. And then avenue two is they may already have a business in their town or their city or their village, wherever they live. And it might be making soup or braiding hair, or, some of them have transportation, I guess our version of an Uber, but not quite, on a scooter traveling 4 hours, or things like that. But they really aren't making any actual money at this because those sort of foundational skills aren't there, or perhaps they are making some kind of money, but what we see is they make it and it's gone immediately because the need is so high to sort of fill all the things that have been filled. So we give them access to education and tools to sort of help them grow it and establish it into an actual business. And then we teach them how to manage that money. So it's like save some, spend some, reinvest some back into the business as like a simple baseline for them. And then option three is they can come in, they get paired with a mentor. So they do 6 1-hour sessions with a mentor where they build out a very different version than you and I would build of a business plan, because it's definitely a very different style of business. And once they've done that, they can come back and they can apply for funding. And so, depending on sort of where they're at and how strong that business plan is, we will grant them funding or we'll send them back for more mentorship and some education. And then eventually they get access to start that. And so, that is sort of the baseline of it. But we also have a mentor who teaches about, menstrual care and mental health and all of these things, because what I recognize is just because you give them access to education and access to create money for themselves, like me, it didn't solve all the other things that had happened in my life. It didn't solve all of the unknowns and well, I still have this problem, and I have money and I can buy some food this week, but it doesn't sort of solve this piece of my life. And so they come into sort of one of the three avenues, but they do get access to a whole other opportunity where they can learn from mentors. And we now have ambassadors who are starting to go into schools and talk to the younger girls about sort of a lot of these things stemming around menstrual care, mental health. What happens after you've got this education? Where will you go? What will you do? What opportunities can we help you see possible? So it's quite the mission. It's not what I ever intended it to be, but I just trust that the universe gives you what you can handle, and says, here, I'm molding you into sort of the person that can lead this and do this. And so it feels really exciting to be, doing this work and at this stage.
I can fully understand what you're saying. I say it. What you just said is you really get healed when you heal, right? When you
Yeah.
help others, you really heal yourself. It's
Yeah.
like it comes back to you in a different energy, and you have to put it in words, and then you have the mirrors to see in others what you went through, so you can heal yourself also while you're healing. So it's a beautiful process,
Thank
and
you.
definitely the universe puts in front of you what you're able to do. And but first, the universe asks, according to me, my opinion, is this what you were asking for? Is this what you want? No. So it's for you to say, yes, but a little bit like that, put a little bit more of joy. So, right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then we will be adding and aligning and reconstructing, as you say. The I wrote that word because I like it. I call it reinvent, but I like the reconstruct also.
It's
Eh,
so funny to hear you say what you just said because when I first started this, what I asked for was virtual assistants. But at the time, I remember actually a good friend and I were literally talking about this just, over the weekend. She said, "Don't you remember when it started? You were always in this space of saying, I feel so uncomfortable. I just want to crawl out of my own skin." And I was doing so well in my business and I was so connected to my kids as a parent and doing really good things in the community, but I always felt like something is not right in my life. Something is completely missing. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not who I'm supposed to be. And then I bought this virtual assistant company. And by day three, I went, well, this isn't going to work. We got to reconstruct this. This is not going to help what I need. And it morphed into everything that I needed. I healed through helping, but I also healed through hearing stories of women and understanding that really, no matter where you are in this world, we tend to walk the same journey. It may be a different story of the book, but we're all sort of in the same book, playing out these things in life in different places. And I think when you really step back and you hear it and you see it and you experience it with them. I mean, I had a girl call me a few weeks ago. Um, she was in South Africa and she was going into the hospital to deliver her baby. And she's calling me on the cell phone because she's doing it alone and she's got no one. And I'm talking to her, well, she's doing this. And I'm going, this is just what the universe had in store. And this is where I'm meant to be. And you go, like you said, inject more joy. I mean, I never would have imagined that this would have turned into moments like that. But I got off of that call and I saw her deliver this baby, and I've gone through years of infertility. I've been trying to do a whole, fertility thing after having kids later on in life. And I just thought, the universe just let me experience this through her and through this and through something so unexpected. And so it's interesting how it all comes full circle at some point. And I love that piece of we get to reconstruct our identity. There's no one way we have to be. And when you reconstruct it, you don't ever have to be that way for any period of time. You can constantly move and grow and change and be and develop and redevelop and say, hey, I actually just don't love this anymore. I'm going to move and be that. And I'm going to do that now. And this makes sense. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Good. Beautiful. Would you like to say any advice to those that are listening to us? What would you tell them? Um,
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is there's no real right, there's no real wrong, there's no real good, there's no real bad. There is no true right way to live. There is no one direct path to happiness. Coming from a person who has made millions of dollars in her business, it's not what made me happy. You know, Being on the phone at 3 in the morning with a woman I've never met, like talking her through giving birth, which is the last thing that I ever would have wasn't even on my radar, made me happy. And so happiness can be found when you just allow yourself to live without trying to be what other people want you to be. Over the years, so many people have said, you should give that up. It takes up so much of your time. You don't even make any money. Like, what? That's crazy. And you just kind of go, no, this is what I'm meant to do. And I think that we find that when we stop playing in right, wrong, good, bad, should, shouldn't, just allow yourself to be present. And I think going inward and asking, am I really who I want to be? My favorite question to ask every client on my very first call with them, and I'm a business coach, so they're always thrown off by this, is if you truly loved yourself the way that you deeply desire to be loved, what would be different in your life? And it's such a powerful way to kind of go, I
If you
am
truly love yourself the way you really
deep,
want to be loved,
deeply desire to be loved in life. What would be different? And I think that it helps us kind of step out of this is right, this is wrong. It's simply, this isn't what I want, and that's 100% of the time what they say. This is not really how I want this to be, Sarah. And it's often about their business, but I don't want my business to be like this. I don't want it to be so hard. I don't want to have to put this much in. And then I say, well, why are you doing it? Oh, because this told me I needed to, and and it always comes back to, let's go inward. And so that's the thing. Don't live in the right, wrong, good, bad. Ask yourself questions about yourself. Stop asking questions about other people. It's not necessary. It honestly doesn't help in the long run, I promise. Go inward, ask yourself questions. What do I want? Who do I want to be? How do I want to love myself? How do I want to be loved? And we get so stuck on asking, what's my purpose? We're so destined and so conditioned to, get into alignment, get into purpose. And it becomes exhausting because then we're chasing something that we don't even know what it is. We're just chasing to try to find this thing instead of just embracing the moments. And that's why I say to my daughter, just please come back and live in the moment. You got asked out of all the kids to do this thing.
it
Let's
just remind me Alice in Wonderland, no?
Oh,
Chasing the rabbit or being herself, no?
you want to know so funny? My wedding was Alice in Wonderland themed. But that,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank
Really,
you.
thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, your energy.
Thank you.
It has been really a very nice and powerful conversation that is also a reminder that allow yourself is not just a moment. It's a continuous question time. It's we question ourselves time after time. It's a daily practice of questioning, of courage, of grace, of self-trust, self-dialogue even, to that. So for everyone listening, give yourself permission to take your space, to rest, to enjoy, to allow yourself to reconstruct you and to become that person that you are meant to be and that you want to be. So, thank you very much for sharing. In one word, Sarah, what are you taking today for this conversation? In one word, what would you say?
I would say empowerment. Yeah,
Good. Nice.
yeah,
I would say reconstruct.
yeah. I
I
use
like
that
that.
word a lot.
Yes. So thank you very much to all the listeners. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and you can take, if you take one idea and you allow yourself just to listen and to implement it, it was worth doing this conversation for you. So
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to say, Sarah?
No, I love it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much again for having me.
Okay, thank you.